Hi. Hey, let's try actually designing a database. Let's suppose that we have a customer and they have a chain of pet stores. So there's multiple pet stores, and in a pet store there are multiple types of animals. And we want to create a database schema to do that. And I'm in MySQL to help me diagram this. So I'm in the EER diagramming tool. And we're just going to try to do this off the top of our head. This would, if I was to do this, I would really just use paper and pencil to begin with. It's a little bit easier. But we'll start by creating a table. And let's just start kind of simply, and we're going to create the table, and this will be the store. Now we know we have multiple stores, so we need to have a way of indexing or grabbing rows out of this table, and we'll do that through a primary key, which is really a way of indexing and an ID for the store, and it's created the name for this as ID store. That sounds good. I'm going to use an underscore just because I like that convention. And then let's say that the store has a store name. All right, we have our store. Now let's start talking about the animals. And I'm going to do it a way, I'm going to show you the bad way, then I'll show you the good way. I'm going to create a table for the animals. And this is going to be, particular pets that are in stores. So like the dog, Fido would be an animal. I'm going to create this new table and I'll call it, I got to double click to switch to it. I'll call it animal. When you create a database, you should be very careful of your names for everything because it makes it much easier to work with if you've picked good names. I need a way to fetch items out of this table, so I'll have a primary key. We'll call it the animal ID, and let's add another column for the animal name. So this would be Fido, for example, or Fluffy if it was a cat. So I have that. Okay, first bad thing not to do. Let's say that we want to know what kind of animal it is. So I'm going to create a field called, I'll call it animal type. And it's a character string. This is a bad idea. I'll show you why. Let me pull up another window. Okay, I've typed out an example of what might be in this table. I have the table animal. I have animal name, Fido, Banjo, Fluffy. And then for animal type, I have canine, kitty. And there's an issue with this. The first issue is I have this text for the type of the animal. Well, let's say that I decided canines, I don't really want to refer to the type of the animal as canine. I'm referring to it as dog. Because this is repeated, the word canine in the table, I would have to go to every single instance where I had canine, and I'd have to go through and I'd have to change it. And it kind of gives you a bad feeling because you're repeating information in this table. There's a different way to do it where I'm not repeating canine, canine, canine over and over again in this table. And I'll show you how you do that. And another point about this also is, maybe with a dog or the different animal types, what if I wanted to store more information about that animal type? Well, what if I wanted to store like the average length that a dog lives in that table, for example? Well, I kind of have an issue because I'm not really describing this animal in detail. I just have to name the word dog, so I can't really expand the definition of an animal. That's kind of another problem with this approach. Okay, so let's not do that. Let's get rid of this animal type. We just don't like this idea. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new table that represents the different types of animals. So I'm going to create another table. I'll call it animal types. And here I'm going to have a primary key so I can refer to it. I'm going to have a animal type name. This would be dog, for example. And then I could have other information about the animal. I could say animal, I could have animal type, max age or something, lifespan, I guess lifespan, and that would be an integer or a number, in other words. Now, when I go back to animal and I'm describing the different types of animals, I can now refer to this animal type through the key for the table, which is the animal type, ID animal type. Okay, so going back to my little picture here to make sure this is clear, I'm not going to refer to the animal type by name. Instead, I'm going to have this ID. So let's say that the ID for the dog is 1, and the ID for the cat type of animal is 2. And now I have a new table here called animal types. And in here, I have the animal type ID. I have that column, and then I'm not going to type this all out. I'll just put animal type name. So I would have 1 for the dog, 1 for the dog, and 2 for the cat. And I'm not repeating the word dog and cat. And I can also add more information about this animal type. You know, we have lifespan, so we have lifespan. And then for the dog, maybe we have 12, and for the cat, we have 17 or something. And so now I can kind of expand information about animal types, and I don't have to repeat this information because I don't refer to all this information about the animal type in my animal table. I just do it through this ID, and then this ID points to another table, and then I can have information about that animal type. Okay, so to do that using the diagramming tool, it's a little bit tricky, but if you think about this for a moment, we know that for a given animal type, like a dog, there will be many different animals. Like if I have the dog type, I have Fido and Banjo. There's many different animals that are of that animal type. So this would be a one-to-many relationship. In the diagramming tool, it helps you create that relationship by this little one-to-many tag here. And when you select this, the tricky thing is you next have to click on the many part. So we have many animals, and then for one animal type. So it's showing you one animal type goes to many animals. And when you do that, it's created this field, which is the ID of the animal type. And it's created a name for this, and it's trying its best to help you out in this with how to name it. But you know, I think I'm just going to kind of simplify this name. Really, I'm just going to call it, it's the ID for the animal type. Maybe I call it something like that. Okay, so continuing with this example, we have a store, and a store could have many different animals in it, right? We would not want to have a field in store called all the animals in this store, right? We would not want to have one field for that with, you know, a bunch of values in it separated by commas. That's not how we do it. We want to have a row in the table that associates an animal with a store. So if you think about this example, one store can have many different animals. So we would have our relationship of one to many, and we click on the many thing first, and then the one side. So one store has many animals, and you can see in our animal table, it's added the ID for the store where this animal lives. I'm just going to change the name. Going back to our little diagram here, so we have, maybe the name was ID, yeah, it was ID store. This points to the store where this animal is located. So Fido might be at store 100, and Fluffy's at that same store, 100, and Banjo is at a different store, maybe same store, 101. Okay, that was a very fast, brief introduction to how to design a database schema. Important takeaways from this: do not have a column in your table. Do not have a column type which holds a lot of values. You don't do that. So if you find yourself doing that, I have a bunch of values in this separated by commas. Don't do it. You're going the wrong approach. Instead, have separate tables that represent different concepts or entities in your database schema. Like I have the store, I have a particular animal, I have a particular animal type, and then you're going to kind of refer to these different entities with indices. I have an animal, it is at a, make this a little bit bigger. I have an animal, the animal is at a particular store, and the animal is of a particular type, and it's referring to those other indices to know information about the animal. All right, when you go to do your schema that you're designing, just keep this in mind and give it a try.